Hello and welcome to today's Partner Infopedia web conference. This is Fast Track Dynamics 365 for Operations Tech Talk. Today's topic, reduce data import and export time using configurations. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Senior Program Manager Mike Faulkner. So without any further delay, Mike, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Janice. Yep, this is our a presentation about some of our new features around improving import and export times with configurations, or as a lot of us call it, the data management framework. So the way this is going to go today is we talked about this in January at our tech conference, and now we're actually able to see exactly what we pulled off. And so what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to do a quick review of Data Management 101 in Dynamics 365 for Operations and Finance. This is for people that are using the cloud version. If you think it's for AX 2012, it's not for that version. It's just for the version in the cloud, Dynamics 365. We're going to then do an overview of the data projects, data configuration data projects feature, and talk about some of the next steps. This is just the beginning of part of our roadmap. And then finally, we're actually going to do a demonstration, so you get to see a real code that will be released soon. So one of the things people have said is, hey, I don't really understand how this works in Dynamics 365. And so you have it, you know, in our cloud version, we obviously have a database in the middle, and you got to get data into it or take data out of it. So when you're going live, you want to load data into the system, and as you're using it, you might want to pull some data out. And the way you do that to pull data is you use something called a data entity. Those data entities are targeted for specific, almost table-related items such as customers, vendors, customer groups, etc. They're very singular, so you have a data entity that will pull in data from a specific kind of data. You can then take multiple of these data entities and package them all together so that you can import lots of data. So if you want to import all of the accounts receivable data or all the accounts payable data, you can package that up, and it's called a data package. And so that data package would have a whole series of data entities in it that you would then use to either import or export information. To create this data package, you create something called a data project. That project has the list of entities. You then process that project, and it creates data packages for you. So that's kind of the process of Management 101. Take data entities, put them in a list in a data project, export or import that project, and create a data package from it or from it. So let's talk about the feature that we just created. This feature is releasing here soon. I'm going to show you a roadmap slide, and the reason I'm going to show you this is because this is just one of several features that we're working on today. So today, you can do the stuff today. You can import and export data from a legal entity. So you can actually have a legal entity, you can export the data, and then you can import it back in. That's something you can already do today with the data management framework. You can also, there's a feature, if you haven't seen it, take a look at the System Administration Common area, and you'll see a feature called data sharing. And what that allows you to do is take an existing legal entity, go into it, and mark certain tables to be shared with other legal entities. So if you have a method of payment and you want every legal entity to have that same method of payment, there is a feature already in Dynamics that allows you to flag the methods of payments and have them copy over to every legal entity. That already exists. That's nothing new that we're adding. What we're talking about today is the third line, is configuration data projects. And the idea of this is that people have what we call golden builds. They're working on building up a system, getting ready to go live, and they want to be able to take this golden build and replicate it over to a live system or a test environment, or they're working with a partner that already has a whole set of data already set up, and it's their golden template, and they want to take advantage of that and put it onto their system. For this feature, you take an existing legal entity, you export a data package, and then you import that package into one or more cloud instances. We were planning to add the concept of rules as well, which would be to modify the data as it goes in. We haven't added that yet. That's something we're looking at in the future. We're also looking at the future in the concept of copying a legal entity to a legal entity. And that's not everything. That's just the configuration part of that. So you have an existing legal entity already in your instance, and you want to copy that legal entity from A to B and make a new legal entity. It's copying the configuration data. And by configuration, I really mean the data from the parameters to setup, almost touching that master data. That's kind of that configuration area. That's what these features are talking about today. So in the future, what we're actually starting on very soon is that fourth one called copying one legal entity to one legal entity. Finally, once we get to that completed, we're looking at how can we automatically synchronize these for you. You know, once you've copied that legal entity, how can we actually automatically synchronize that data for you? And so today what we're going to focus on is that third line, the one in the lighter purple. We're going to show you how we took our existing capability, functionality of copying data, exporting it and importing it, and really enhanced it and made it a lot easier to use and took care of all the issues and challenges that you might have in doing that today. In that configuration data packages that we're going to show you today, the templates, we cover parameters, number sequences, workflow, general ledger, reference data, and some very limited master data. And that data is optional. You can turn that off or on, but we're going to show you how we're including each one of these areas in the data. So here's the process, and it doesn't look a whole lot different than what you're doing today, but what we've done is we've made it a less challenging, a more powerful process for you. So if you start in the lower left-hand corner, you see templates. What we've done is we've taken the entities that are out there today. There's over 2,000 entities, and we've actually created templates of them and sequenced them for you, so you don't have to figure out which entities need to come into which entities that you need to load data into Dynamics. So and we've templated them, so we've got 22 templates. Right now they're a part of the product. You load them inside the product. We're very shortly looking and making sure they're available on LCS so that we can keep them updated and refreshed. But those templates will be provided to you for use. You can tweak them, you can tune them, you can do whatever you want to them. We've tested them to make sure that they all work together and will bring your data in for you correctly and export your data. Moving up on the left there, you create an export configuration. This is simply a data project like we talked about before. You can add your own entities, you can add our templates, and then you can actually modify the mappings and the filters in those data packages. We facilitated making that a much easier process. You know, once you've got those packages ready to go, then you go ahead and export it. And you export it just like you did before. Again, with a better interface, we've enhanced that a lot. And you can export that package locally. In the future, what we want to be able to do is take that package and export it to LCS, so you can actually use LCS as your portability to other instances. That's something we're looking at very soon here. Once you've exported that package, you can take it over to that next instance, that other instance. You can create it, bring it into the system, creating an import package. You can load one of these packages. You can load several of these packages. The overall idea behind this whole thing is instead of having lots of packages, like 100 or 200 packages, you only have 1, 2, maybe even 3 at the most, where your entire configuration is stored in. So you don't have to manage large numbers and volumes of packages. Once you've created those import packages and loaded them in, then you go ahead and do an import just like you would do today. So it may sound to you like, hey, we haven't done a whole lot of different things. We can export and import today. I'm going to show you what's really different about what you can do with configurations. Again, push one button, export the data, push one button, import the data. That's really what our goal has been, and we're pretty close. Just so you understand what else we've done, I mean, again, part of this is just about user interface, part of this is about sequencing and templates, but there's a whole bunch of things we wanted to do to make it a better experience. There are, like I said, there's over 2,000 entities. I think we're up to like 2,600. The number changes every day. But there's a lot of them there for you to try to understand what the dependencies are between those entities. What we've done is we've sequenced those entities to take care of those dependencies for you. In the long run, we'd like to make that automatic. We'd like to have a function to do that. It turned out to be a large task that we couldn't pull off by this release. So in the interim, what we did is we manually sequenced them for you with a sequencing methodology that we've described in detail in our documentation. And with that methodology, we're actually able to take all of these different templates and merge them together and come up with one big configuration that is still automatically sequenced to take care of dependencies. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Another thing we did is we updated the entity metadata. And what I mean by that is, when you're looking for an entity, you used to have to just know what entity you needed. Well, maybe you understand what module you need, but you don't know what the entities are for that module. We went ahead and changed, added metadata in the entity. So now we have information about what module it belongs to. And then we added a keyword, which is actually almost like a subversion of the module. For example, if you want to know what entities are in accounts payable, we have a module, accounts payable module. But we also have a keyword if you wanted to just find entities that help you with payments. You can key in the keyword payment, and it would keep filtering your list of entities down so you could help you find the ones you want. Another issue that we had is that we had something called self-referencing entities. The good example is a customer. A customer has a customer number, but a customer also has an invoice number. So if you don't have the invoice customer has a customer invoice customer. If you didn't have that invoice customer already loaded and you tried to load the customer, it would fail because it says, hey, that invoice customer doesn't exist. And so the only way for you to do that was do it in 2 passes and load those invoice customers first, or hopefully sort the file in the right order and maybe not make a mistake. Well, what we did is we created a routine that actually looks at the data that you've got in your import and sorts it ahead of time. And it does it with almost no performance effect at all. So that all you have to do now is provide us with your list of customers, and we will take care of the sequencing for you of those customers. So you don't have to load them twice in 2 passes. We've done that there's at least 15 or 20 different entities that we've done that for, and many of them are listed in our documentation. Another situation we wanted to solve was circular dependencies. A vendor has a default bank account, but a bank account has a vendor. So you're stuck in a permanent loop. So how can you do that? A lot of people would turn off validation and actually import stuff, and it wouldn't get validated, but they would hope it would be fine. So what we've done is we've taken various instances where we have that circular dependency, and we've broken the dependency by allowing one entity to figure out what needs to be done, or another entity. For example, with a vendor entity, the vendor entity no longer loads the bank account, but when you load the bank accounts for a vendor, it automatically updates the vendor for you, that kind of stuff. So we would deal with the situation with some kind of a normal business process. We took a look at the speed of a lot of entities. There's plenty more work to do there, but we took a look. For example, cities and zip codes just take like 45 minutes to load. I think it takes minutes now. We took care of that, and we looked at a lot of speed things. Also, there's a lot of entities. Well, some of these entities are optimized for OData, which is using Excel as your add-in and loading it into Excel and making some changes. A real good example was account structures. We had an entity in account structures that if you exported the data, it would automatically turn the account structure back to the draft status. Well, if you're copying a configuration, you don't want that to happen. You want it to come out as active and go back in as active. So we actually added an extra set of entities to do that work instead of the OData entity doing that work. So you'll find those entities are also defined in our templates. So as you can tell, that's all I'm going to do for PowerPoint. As you can tell, we put a whole lot of effort into making the experience better and fixing issues with entities and the UI and making sure that it's a better experience for you. So I'm going to take just a minute or two and see if there's any questions. One of the questions is Plat 7 or Plat Update 8. When was this released? Okay, so the tools that you're going to see were released in Platform 7. Then what you're going to see is the templates themselves are being released in the July release. So there's 2 portions of this whole tool. One of them of this whole feature. One of them is fixing up the tools. And those tools exist in what's called the foundation, the lower foundation layer, the platform. So the user experience, the tools that make this stuff work, that exists in the platform. That came out in 7, and there's some really good edits in 8. That's where I would focus on, is picking up the Platform 8 version. The templates themselves are part of the application. They are very related to each of the entities. So those templates will be delivered with the July release, and there'll be a button in a form. I'll show you that button, and that button will allow you to load them automatically. And then a little bit later this summer, hopefully, they will actually deliver them in LCS as well, so you can push them into your release. But these templates are so related to kind of the release that you're on, because entities change pretty regularly. We have to kind of keep them in sync with the release that they're on. Okay, one more question I'm going to take, and I'm going to move on real quick. Will it be possible to link these data templates to process data packages? These data templates they're almost like data packages, but not quite. They're XML packages, just like a data package is. You will use the templates to create data packages that you will then match the process data package. That's what you'll end up doing. The templates simply give you the sequencing and the correct order and the right set of data templates. The templates don't have the data in them. You put them in a project, you export them, that becomes a data package. The package has the sequencing and the package has the data. So the templates just get you there. Let me go ahead and start. I'm going to actually start demonstrating this stuff. I think a lot of this stuff will help you make some sense. Let's go over there. That's not what you wanted to see. You wanted to see me logged in. Okay. So this is what you normally see when you come into Dynamics 365. You see this data management form, but take a look up here. You'll see this little tag up here. What we've done is we've made so many changes to the user interface for the workspace, for the templates, and for the data packet, for the import-export form, that we actually created a second set of forms that you can choose which one you want. If you like this version, you like what's going on, you can leave it alone. It'll work just like it did yesterday. However, what we want to show you is that we've created what's called an enhanced view. So if you go to the framework parameters and go to the bottom here where it says view defaults and pick enhanced view, you'll be living in the new world and you need to refresh your browser. You'll be living in the new world of the data management framework that we've created. So let's take a look first. There's 3 forms that exist. There's the data management workspace itself. There's a template form that we actually saw that almost nobody was ever using, and it's a shame because that's where a lot of the power of this is going to live. And the last one is the export-import form. We're going to show you those 3 changes. This isn't the end of the world. This is the beginning of the changes. So let's take a look here at the workspace. Couple changes that we made to the workspace. You can see on the left we've got some selections here, some filters. Well, what we have done is we still have data projects, but we're exposing the type, the import-export type, so you can filter on that. And we've added a field called category, and all it is a filter field. There's nothing magic about if it says configuration, it'll do something tomorrow different. But there's a project category. There is project, which is a basic project you do today. Configuration, we're using that for these larger configuration packages. Integration, this is something partners ask us for. They say, hey, they have a lot of integration projects. They'd like to separate them out and keep them clear from other projects so they could do that. So we added that. And we added other, which we're expecting a kind of a bring your own database. Integrations are coming, things like that. So we wanted to have another category allow you to do things like filter out, bring your own database. If you notice on the left, if you click on import projects, you'll simply get the list of import projects. Click on export projects, you get that list. Click on configuration, you just get the list of configurations. Same for integration, and then same for other. Now, and that's all it really does for you. But right now there's only 6 or 7 up there on the screen. That doesn't look that big of a deal. But when you're doing a lot of imports, you're doing a lot of integrations, you're doing a lot of stuff, and this list is starting to scroll off the screen, the filter will help you quite a bit in keeping things organized. Another thing we've done is we've kind of moved some of the buttons out and some of them forward. So you can go ahead and you can still click on this and say run project. You can load project from here. You can also load project by just clicking on the URL here. That's one thing, but you can also load it up here. You can also delete projects. You can multi-select and delete, or single select, either one, but you can delete projects right from the workspace. You don't have to go to the export form, import form. And you can also download it. This isn't downloading the data. This is downloading the formatting. So if you have an export project and you want to save the project structure, this is where you download the package. It just downloads the structure, not the spreadsheet spreadsheets themselves. You can still do this stuff inside of the execution details and I mean inside the export project itself. We just moved them forward to make it a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and move to the right here. This is the job history screen. Now, we just subtly tweaked it up, but what we did is we made a list of of the job dates, so you can actually filter down some of the earlier jobs. And what we did is we turned it back into a grid, and we did that because we want to make it a little simpler to view. And you can see right here in the middle is your status that you had before, like the the red X or this checkbox. Here's the export type. Here's the execution group, and you can still click on this and then open up the execution details form, or you can click on a bunch of them and delete a whole list of them. Or instead of having to open the details form, you can go ahead and click on this and go ahead and download the package. And this is the package that has not only the structure, but the data behind it. So those are the very simple changes that we've made to the workspace. If you want to, you can switch back up here to the standard view. It'll show you the other view. If you want to, we're going to live kind of here in the export view. One other thing that we did is in the configuration data sources, just something quick to notice. As you were adding files and bringing in files into your import packages, for example, or even your export packages, you always had to remember the name of the entity and rename and then browse to a file name and then actually say what kind of file was it. Even though it was an Excel file, we didn't recognize that. Well, now we have, and so what you can do now in your source data formats is pick the default extension, the default source name that you want to use whenever we see a file that has CSV, XLS, zip, text, or XML. We will automatically, if we see a file come in that way, we will automatically switch to that data source for you. All right, so that's the workspace stuff first. Let's go ahead and let's go to templates. Now again, this was, I would say, a very underused form, and the idea behind this form is simply a place where you can create a list of entities that you want to package together and then bring them in quickly into a project. We took that big step farther and really extended the user interface. On the left-hand side is a list of all the default templates that we're delivering to you. Right now there's 22 of them in here. For example, fixed assets has got this list, inventory's got this list, etc. The way you load these up, when you start up the system, this will be empty. And the way you load that up is a menu right here at the top called Load Default Templates. And this is the list we have today. We have a retail template in the working bench right now. We've got a warehouse template we're looking at, payroll, and a few others. This is the list that you can load automatically. So when you come into your system, it's empty. You can go to the bottom here and say Load All, or you can actually click on just 2 or 3 of them and say Load Selected. If they already exist and you load them again, they'll just wipe out the ones that are there and replace them with this one. So if you have modified these templates to something that you want to use, just be aware that they'll be wiped out if you go ahead and load them a second time. We have a feature that's already queued up that'll allow you to actually say save the original and I want to put a new one in there, but that didn't make it for this release. So this is the list of templates, and something to notice about this list is we started out with kind of that system level shared stuff. So anytime you want to load a system, you got to have some basic stuff. There's system, there's GL shared, and there's workflow. And then pretty much every system has general ledger. So these are the kind of what we've done is we've organized these templates in kind of the order that would make sense for you to load them. Once we get inside these templates, we'll show you that inside the templates, in addition, we've also given it some smarts that way. So you'll see that bank would go first, then payables, tax, receivable, etc. These would be normally how you would load those. So we're trying to give you that help in showing you kind of more the sequencing that you would use to load these. At the bottom, you see the financials template. What we've done is we've taken all the financials templates above, and we've created one large template from that. Same thing with supply chain, and then the same thing that the first 4 are in the system and shared. So the idea is that we're trying to give you a list of pieces of templates, but we're also giving you a larger group of templates. They're for you to use however you need to use them. We're not going to force you into a certain way of doing things. I mean, if you want to use the payables template and change it, you go ahead and do that yourself. These are just to help you. We've tried to do all the work ahead of time to help you know which entities to use and what order to use them in. So let's take a look at a simple one. We'll take a look at bank. Notice the new user interface. Very simple. You can actually make your own templates if you want. That's how we did it. You can, here on the grid at the bottom, here's the list of the entities. These are the list of entities that would normally go into creating a bank, adding to the bank tables to make sure they get loaded up front. This is the list. Now notice in the second, third, and fourth column, you've got something called unit, level, and sequence. These are explained in detail in the new documentation that we've created. I'll try to explain it more briefly here. The execution level unit is kind of the first level, and every time the unit is different, things will run in parallel. So if you have a 1 here and a 2 below it, those two entities would run in parallel. You'd process those simultaneously. However, you don't have any control of what follows after it. So what we've done for our use is we've got them in a single execution unit. We will control the order that they run in. The next is called the level. Everything in a level will execute at the same time as long as it's got the same sequence. So level and sequence go together. Anything with the same level and the same sequence will load in parallel. And this will work across all templates. So what we decided to do, instead of sequentially making every template be, got to run bank, and then you got to run payables, and you got to run tax, within each template what we've done is we've taken these levels and sequences and figured out which ones can run parallel across all modules. So if bank and payables and tax are queued up, which ones can we process simultaneously across all modules, and we put them in that order. Since you can't sort 3 columns at once in a grid, we added that sort for you. And you can see that like the purpose code, charge code, bank code, transaction type, these first 6, they will all process simultaneously. There's no dependency between these six entities. In addition, if I go over to the accounts payable module, you see they also have some level 30 ones. If I put these two templates together and said process, export, or import, they would all process simultaneously all at once. They wouldn't be waiting for each other. But as you move on, you see that there's a level 30, 20. Those would then kick in next. And so what we've done inside here is we've parallel processed as much as we can, and then we go ahead and move on to the next level of processing. So you'll see levels 30, 40, etc. moving on. Everything below 100 are things that can massively parallel. So 2 concepts there, do bank, do payables, but at the same time, parallel process. What we've done is we pretty much moved the master records up above into kind of the hundreds and the ones that match this number over here, because master records have a tendency to be very complicated. They have a lot of dependencies ahead of them, so we move them out front. So there's much more detail about this in the documentation. I really suggest you take a look at that. So you've got these entities. How did we find these entities? Well, we added columns to search by. We've got modules. You can see you can mix modules in our templates. We've got these tags that we set up. They're just searching tags. That's all they do. And then we've got these categories. These were already there, but we've exposed them. Master records are obviously master. Reference would be things that are used by master records. Parameters are setup items, etc. So it helps you filter on which ones are master. And then once you've got this all set up, you can actually filter this information and actually set up a template that only filters certain things. So this little icon here is actually allowing you to create a filter. So let's say that you only ever wanted bank groups from Europe, and that was your template. I don't know why you do that, but that's what I'm going to use for my example. Notice how this changed to a pencil. You can create this template with any filter that you want on it. Those filters will be carried up into the data project, where you can then even edit them even more if you want. But these filters you assign at the template level will move up to the project level. Now the last thing for the templates is this view map. In this case, for templates, you may want to remove fields from your template. And for your specific implementation, you don't want to have a certain field. Like you don't want to have a bank name. I don't know why, but maybe you would. Maybe you don't want to have a cellular phone. But you can remove from the template that field. And then when you pick this template and you go into a data project with it, that field will no longer be mapped. It'll never be mapped for you after that. You don't have to change the entity mappings, is what we're basically saying here. You don't have to change the entity mapping to get rid of that field. You can get rid of it through the template. Okay, so that's the new look. That's there's there's a grid there. So you can add entities to this by simply using the add entity menu choice. Type in some letters, you can add an entity to it. We've added a new concept called add multiple, and I'll show you this in more detail in the data project. This allows you to filter the entities by the module, the name of it, the module name, the tag, or the category. So for example, if I was looking for all the entities with the word reason in it, I could type reason. Now it gives me a list of all the names that have the word reason in it. But maybe I only care about accounts receivable reasons. Now I'm down to 2. And maybe this would be too easy, but maybe I'm just saying I want setup. Now I'm down to 1. And so I could even say I want entity categories. Which category do I want? And I want parameters. Now I'm down to none because I got rid of them all. But I can get rid of this and get it back. So you have control of what you want to search for. And then you simply click here and say add entities, and it would add them to the bottom for you. It would add them to the screen and then close it. Just so I don't mess up my wonderful demo, I'm going to remove them. There's the feature to remove them. And then open in Excel. So actually one of the ways we set this up originally to get this thing going is we exported all of our entities to an Excel spreadsheet and started munching them and saying which ones do we want, what sequences do we want them in there. And then we used to open in Excel to actually populate our templates. What this does is this uses, there's an entity of entities. And what we did is we created a template modifying Excel so that it brings in the entities into Excel, and you can actually come in here and do things like modify execution units and sequences. You can actually sort here. You do several things. You can add an entity here and say publish, and it'll actually check the entity to see if it's valid. But you can use Excel to actually build these templates for yourself, or to pull these entities out and bring them with you and look at them. So open in Excel was a nice feature that we added. I showed you sort by, and then resequence. What that does is, let's say you messed up that you wanted to resequence 4 items. You can actually go in there and say, I want to resequence these 3 items, and I want to change them from what's out there to, I want to change them to sequence 15 or whatever. You can actually resequence a bunch of entities instead of having to change them one at a time. The last 2 features about this template they're kind of important. If you wanted to copy this template, you could export it, but then when you came to import it up here, it would actually just import it back in and it'd say, hey, that name already exists. So what you can do is you can export this template and then create a new one and say, new ID, and then you can say replace from template. And what that would allow you to do is go browse for the template that you just exported, and it would bring it in, so you can actually create your own version of these templates very quickly. And so you just say browse, you'd find the file, and then it would just bring in that template as if you had typed it in from scratch. The last thing is create from data project. So what you can do is same thing, you can have a new ID, but instead of replacing it with a template, you can go find a data project that you've already created, and you can say export customer groups, for example. Well, I created this data project that I really liked the way it worked. I can say build this template, and it actually pulls it in from the data project, pulls it into the template for you. So now you've got a template built from a project that you had before. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on in this template form. Not a lot of people actually use it. We've just really added a lot of power to it. And so now you've got this list of documents, these templates you can pull from. Again, these are just lists of entities that you can manipulate yourself, delete, and take out. Just remember, the ones we've created, we've spent a whole lot of time making sure that they run in the right order and that there's the right number of entities there. So if you do change them, just remember you might be kind of upsetting the balance of order, the order of that. Are there any ones? So I'm going to take well, we're running a little bit. I'll take one question here.
There's a lot of questions on documentation. If you could just outline one that will be released, what kind of documentation?
Have I got a deal for you on documentation? The documentation is available today. I've got it's in the PowerPoint that I showed you has a screen. I'm going to show you when I'm done. Has a screen on it. It's multiple pages long. If you go to the Microsoft documentation up here and look in data entities and migrating entities configuration data projects, you'll see one set of documentation that explains the overview of how it works, and then you'll see another one on how data templates work and all the detail about units and sequencing, what's going on with templates that have the same entity, how does that work, how do you merge templates, how do you handle master data. And the last one, which is actually kind of the most important one, is actually how you create these export configurations and then import them back in. Plus, this one has a bunch of information about special considerations for entities. For example, if you're going to export GL shared entities, take a look and make sure you do these things. If you're going to remove mappings, you should remove these mappings when you do it. If you're going to do golden build that have multiple legal entities, kind of do this stuff first. So we've spent a lot of time documenting the thought behind these templates that we've got. Go ahead and go out to this documentation and take a read. And we'll update it as often as we can to keep it current, because we're going to be adding more templates and making changes as we go. All right. Okay, so we are, I want to go ahead and get on to the meat of this thing, which is the last form, which is the data export form. So just like you used to do before, if you want to make an export project, you click on export. You want to make an import project, you click on import. The form, it looks identical, so it's just an easier way to get in. This is the import project form. Looks just like the template form, so a lot of the stuff I just talked about, you'll be able to reuse it, so I won't go over that again, but I'll talk about the differences that are there. Also notice on the left, here's a list of all your existing projects, so you can switch back and forth between your current project and another project if you want to. So, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. So I'm going to do a brand new project. So you did a new project, description, what do you want it to be there? You got to export, and here's where you pick the kind of project I was talking about. Again, it's just a picker. There's nothing else to it. Don't build any thought processes into it. But what we did with this form is we took that old export form where you had to add entities, and we really beefed it up to match kind of the way you do your work. For example, if you want to generate a data package, you only ask that question once, so we put it up here in the header. If you want to add an entity, it's the same old form that came up. You can go ahead and type in customer group or something like that, and you can get that stuff. It's the same old way to do it, but we've done some extra stuff. We remember which target format you used last time, so you don't have to keep typing it in over and over again. And then down here, you just simply say add. Now, once you say add, it lets you keep going. You don't have to keep popping that screen up. You can just go ahead and add another entity. Customer reasons. You can say add. Okay, so that's the old-fashioned way. That's the old way you used to do it. The new way is add multiple. I showed you that before. So again, if I had reason, accounts receivable, and then a tag, and I click right here on the column to pick it. I say add selected. It just adds them again. So you can add multiple. You can add as many as you want that way. Now here's one of the ones where I was talking about the file extension. If you have a package or you have a spreadsheet or a CSV file and you already have that, why should I ask you what type of file it is, and why should I ask you the entity name if it's already in the name? So if I have a customer groups XLS, that's the name. All I should have to do is click on it, and in this case it's saying override because I already had one, and it already figured out it was Excel. It already figured out the entity name, and it already added it. So you can do the same thing for a package. So if you upload an ad and you pick a package, it's going to recognize that that's a package, and it's going to go ahead and load the entire package for you as a file. So you don't have to remember that .zip means package. It'll just figure it all out. The last thing in here is adding a template. Those templates that I showed you, here's the list. So if I want to add bank and I make the target Excel, I'll just add bank. And there they all are. So the bank just came in. I'm going to sort it real quick because I want to look at it the right way. I want to resequence these three right here so that they run first. So I'll make those to be 30 and 5 just because I want to. Then see it changes those sequences. I can open this in Excel. I can do all the same things I showed you before. But the point of it is you have a data project now that has the entity column, the execution units. And let's talk about the new stuff. If you have old data packages out there, we update our software and we obsolete some of those things. Well, what we wanted to be able to figure out is a way to tell you that we did that. So now if we obsolete an entity from a prior version, the developers will flag that entity as obsolete, but it won't go away. And then we'll put the new entities into our templates. So if you have an old data package that you still want to use and it pops up with an old entity, it will flag it and say obsolete and give you a message at the top. It'll say there's an obsolete entity in your package, just to warn you. So you know that you have an old entity. You still use it, but we would recommend finding the new entity that goes for it. You can update your source data format right here on the screen. So you don't have to delete the entity and put it back in. We added a feature called disable. What this does is for this data package, we will disable the export or whatever. If you're in import, it's import. We'll disable whatever function you're doing. We'll disable it for just this data project. So if you're testing some stuff out and you have 5 entities and something's going wrong, you can disable a couple of them temporarily, do your testing, come back in and re-enable them and try it again. Change some sequencing, whatever you want. This disable flag is a temporary disable. Just don't export or just don't import. Here's your modules and tags. You got your filters. Now in this case, you got the full map that you have before. That hasn't changed. We just have a button for you. And then we've put the actual refresh type here on the screen. So if incremental push works, it'll allow you to do it. If it doesn't, it'll error out for you, but you can actually make that modification here on the screen as well. So if I want to go to switch to a project, I'm going to show you a different project. If you go to export a golden build, this project, we've got hundreds and hundreds of entities in this project. This is like the entire financial supply chain and shared import export, and you can sort it as well so you can get it in the right order. But as you can see, what we've done, look at all the ones that start with, they have the same sequences and numbers and stuff like that. Those are all going to run in parallel, like I talked about before. See the 3010s, for example, that's the first place we started. Look at all the 20, 30, 40 of them. The way this is set up, if you push the export button up there, it's going to export all those in parallel. So once you've got this data project, we're done. I mean, you can export. You can export the way you used to export. I'm going to do a small one because I don't want to wait, for this one to run. But export customers. If I say export, you still get this old execution summary, and you still execute it the same way. We're taking a look at the execution details summary, execution summary form now. We're taking a look at that as well, but we haven't changed that. That still exists. It's still out there. Okay, so you can see the crux of this feature is very simple. We wanted to improve the user interface tremendously. We wanted to give you a whole bunch of templates that are separate or can be merged together so that all the dependencies remain separate and merged or can be merged at any time. So you have all the power of all the thoughts that we've done of dependencies, so you don't have to worry about dependencies. And then you still have the capability of exporting and using some of the functionality that you already had. So that's really what's behind configurations. It's pretty close. We probably got close, about 95% to the one button push goal, where you could push one button to export and one to import. We almost got there. Let me show you briefly import to show you that it's not that much difference. If you click on import, instead of generate data, you got truncate. We only have really one field to pick. It's it's file, because that's all you ever import is files. We added the customer zip. This is a package. So you would typically bring in an export package into your import form. Of course, I should have warmed this form up, but it's actually processing the entire package. There was only one there. But you would bring in an entire package. It would list the entire package. Then you would hit the import button like you would before as well. Alrighty, so we've got about 9 minutes left. What I'd like to do is I'm going to go back to the presentation briefly, and this is the list of configurations. It will be in that PowerPoint. This is the list of. You can find it. It's in the documentation as well. You can find it. I'm going to answer a couple questions, and I've got some polling questions I would like you to answer for me. After this feature, we're going to start with a direct LE to LE copy. It's a new feature that we're working on where you can actually pick an LE and make a copy of the configuration of it without exporting it as a file. We're doing that next. I got 4 questions I'd really like you to answer for me. But before that, what I'm going to do is I will answer a couple questions if you guys have something that's critical. If not, we're going to go right into the polling. Okay. Surface Pro? You're running on Surface Pro? Okay. Do I have to delete if I choose the wrong format? No. Thanks for the question, Karina. If I'll go back to that screen. You can change your source data format right here. So, if you've already imported it, or either way. Thing is, if you're importing a file, that's different. You're importing an Excel file. If you change it, you're kind of messing it up. But if you're on an export, you want to export to a CSV, for example. And the idea here is you can pick your source data format. So if you typed it in yourself and said it was Excel and it was really CSV, you can go ahead and change it here and make sure it's CSV, but you're allowed to do that. Okay, what I'm going to do is I think I talked very quickly and there's a lot of stuff to understand. I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to move on and turn it over to Janice for the polling. I really do want to get the information about legal entity to legal entity information that you can send. You can also email me. I'm going to put my email here on this on the talking since I didn't type it in. I should have. My email address is mfaulkner, so it's MFALKNER @Microsoft.com. If you have any ideas about copying from legal entity to legal entity, or you have any other feedback, I'm more than willing to receive it. That's my direct email. So Janice, if you take it over and go ahead and do the polling, I'd appreciate it.
All right, great. Thank you, Mike. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as Mike said, we're going to be doing some polling here. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that first one up on the left-hand side of your screen. You should be seeing it just about now. It says, we are starting to work on a legal entity to legal entity copy feature. How many legal entities did you create when you first went live? You can just go ahead and type your answer into the white text box and click submit. We'll give you just a couple moments to read through that and answer. All right, getting some feedback. Great, thank you for those who are participating. Leave that there just for a couple more seconds so we can get as many people as we can to get some answers. Great feedback, seeing a wide range of numbers there. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our second polling question. And it should be appearing on your screen right about now. How many legal entities do you have now? Again, just type your question into the white text box and click submit. We do appreciate you participating in these polls. As Mike said, it is very valuable information for us, and we do appreciate you taking the time. All right, getting a great response rate. Excellent. And we have 2 more for you. I'm going to go ahead and bring the third one up for you now. And you should be seeing it on your screen now. It says, how often do you add legal entities? This one's a little bit different. It's a radio button. You can go ahead and make your selection by clicking directly on the screen and then click submit. All right, getting some good feedback. Excellent. Looks as though the majority of the audience is saying seldom to yearly. Excellent. Although all the categories are being represented. All right, and we're going to go ahead and do our last polling question. How many legal entities do you add for that period of time? Again, just type your answer into the white text box and click submit. We'll leave that there for a little while. All right. Excellent. All right, so we'll go ahead and leave that one up for those of you who want to answer it. And with that, Mike, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to you to answer any Q&A or wrap up with any final thoughts.
Yep. We got a boatload of questions. I think April and Brian have done a really good job of answering them back to you. Thank you again for listening, and especially those of you that have contributed to the feature. We had over 100 partners and customers contribute, and it's been a great experience to work with everybody. So I'm looking forward to working again with you guys on the LELE copy. And again, if you have any questions, mfaulkner@microsoft.com. So thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you, Mike. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring your attention to a link that I just posted in the messages panel. That's a link to a short survey for this web conference, and we ask that you please take a moment before logging out to access it. We hope that you found today's information helpful, and if you enjoyed today's web conference or have feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, this is your chance to let us know. The survey scores are on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible. And with that, that's going to conclude today's Infopedia web conference. Attendees can access the web conference recording via the same registration site used for today's live broadcast. I'd like to extend a thank you to our presenter, Mike, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today.